They never told us the real reason Apollo 18 was cancelled. The capsule crashed into the Pacific Ocean 16 hours ahead of schedule, and when the Navy pulled it from the water, only 2 astronauts were inside. There should have been 3. The missing astronaut's suit was found in the capsule, torn open from the inside, with something that looked like black oil coating the interior. Chemical analysis identified the substance as organic, but unlike any biological material on Earth, it had a half-life. It was decaying into something else, something the lab techs refused to name in their official reports. The 2 survivors couldn't remember what happened in the caves, but they both woke up screaming the same nightmare every night, walking through tunnels that went on forever, passing rooms filled with sleeping things that looked almost human but not quite NASA, put them through months of psychiatric evaluation before finally releasing them, though the transcripts from those sessions remain classified to this day. The doctors noted something peculiar. Both men refused to sleep with the lights off, and both developed an irrational fear of enclosed spaces, despite having spent years training in cramped spacecraft simulators. Neither man lived past his 40th birthday. Both died in their sleep with expressions of such pure terror that the coroners requested counselling. One coroner quit his job 3 days later. He never explained why, but his daughter later mentioned he'd started sleeping with every light in his house turned on. The caves themselves were mapped by remote probes after the disastrous manned mission. What they found defied explanation: a network of tunnels spanning thousands of miles beneath the lunar surface, all leading to a single central chamber the size of Texas. The chamber's walls were covered floor to ceiling with what appeared to be biological pods, millions of them, each one containing a preserved specimen. The probes identified creatures from every era of Earth's history: dinosaurs, ancient mammals, extinct birds, and in the newest section, unmistakably human bodies dressed in modern clothing. The dates on the pods suggested they had been collected over billions of years. But the section that made NASA terminate the entire mission and seal the data forever was the last wing they explored, a vast, empty area with millions of unfilled pods, each one labelled with coordinates. Coordinates that mapped every major population centre on Earth with collection dates scheduled for next year. I found this information 3 months ago, buried in a corrupted database at the Lyndon B. Johnson Space Center in Houston. They fired me 2 days later for unauthorized access to classified systems. They didn't press charges. They never do when you stumble onto something they prefer stayed hidden. Instead, they offered me a severance package and a non-disclosure agreement that would have set me up for life. I didn't sign it, now they're watching. I don't have much time, so I'm telling you everything. What really happened on that mission beneath the lunar surface? My name is Oliver Briggs, and until 3 months ago I was a data restoration specialist at Johnson Space Center. Not the glamorous kind of NASA employee. I never met an astronaut, never watched a launch from mission control. I spent my days in sub-level 3, breathing recycled air that smelled like old carpet, bringing corrupted files back from digital death. The work suited me, quiet, methodical. Nobody asking questions about why I preferred spending 12-hour shifts alone with vintage server arrays instead of having a life. My supervisor, Leonard Voss, was the only person I'd call a friend. We'd grab lunch sometimes. He'd complain about his ex-wife's lawyer. I'd nod and pretend to care. It was Leonard who assigned me the Apollo Legacy project in late August. "It's grunt work," he said, sliding a tablet across his desk, "converting old mission data into modern formats. Everything from Apollo 1 through 17. Should keep you busy through October." I scanned the file list. Thousands of documents, audio recordings, telemetry data. Most of it already preserved decades ago, just needing updated metadata tags and compression protocols. "What about Apollo 18? I asked. Leonard's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes, a calculation being made. There was no Apollo 18. Mission was cancelled in 1970. Budget cuts. Right. I picked up the tablet. "I'll have the first batch ready by Friday." He nodded, already turning back to his monitor, and I knew the conversation was finished. But I'd seen something in that fractional hesitation, the way his jaw tightened when I mentioned 18. Leonard was good at his job because he was good at lying, but everyone has tells. I started the restoration work that afternoon. Routine stuff at first: flight plans, crew manifests, post-mission reports. The files were cleaner than I expected, considering their age. Someone had taken care during the original digitization in the 80s. 3 weeks in, I found the first gap. Apollo 15's geological surveys included detailed seismic readings of the Hadley Rill area. Apollo 16 logged magnetic field variations near the Descartes Highlands. Apollo 17 recorded gravitational anomalies at Taurus Littrow, all standard scientific data. But between Apollo 16 and 17, there was a 7-month gap in lunar seismic monitoring. The network kept running. The instruments were still active, transmitting data back to Earth. The readings just weren't in the archive. I pulled up the hardware logs. The seismometers had been functioning normally during that period. In fact, they'd recorded some of the most significant moonquake activity in the entire Apollo program, 37 separate events, all clustered in a region designated as mare cognitum, each one measuring between 4.2 and 4.8 on the lunar magnitude scale. The readings were there in the raw telemetry, but every analysis report, every scientific paper, every mission summary from that period, gone. Scrubbed so cleanly that most people wouldn't even notice the gap. I should have logged it as a data corruption issue and moved on. Should have remembered that I was hired to restore files, not question why some files didn't exist in the first place. Instead, I spent my lunch break in the physical archives. Johnson Space Center keeps the old stuff in a warehouse facility 10 miles from the main campus. Bankers' boxes stacked floor to ceiling, each one carefully labelled and logged, the kind of place where paper goes to be forgotten. The archive clerk was a kid barely out of college, more interested in his phone than checking my credentials. I signed in as Leonard Voss, forged his signature from memory, and headed into the stacks. It took me 4 hours to find what I was looking for. The box was labelled Apollo 17, Miscellaneous Crew Personal Items, 1972. Inside, buried under flight checklists and astronaut food menus, I found a manila envelope marked with a handwritten note. Backup, eyes only, destroy after review. Someone hadn't destroyed it. Inside was a single photograph, not an official NASA image. This looked like it had been taken with a personal camera, slightly out of focus, the colour degraded to yellows and blues. It showed 3 men in a cramped space that might have been a lunar module, though the interior was wrong, too large. The walls were rough, unfinished, like natural rock. 2 of the men I recognised from mission photos, Commander Eugene Cernan and lunar module pilot Harrison Schmitt from Apollo 17. The 3rd man I didn't know. He wore a NASA suit with no name patch, and he was holding something in his gloved hands. Something organic looking and wrong, like a dried flower made of black glass. On the back of the photo, someone had written in pencil, Mare Cognitum Survey, Day 3, Specimen 7, entrance shaft coordinates recorded. I took the photo, slipped it into my jacket pocket and walked out of the archives, like I had every right to be there. The kid at the desk didn't look up. That night, I ran facial recognition on the 3rd man. The software pulled a hit from a 1971 NASA employee database, Dr. Vincent LaRue, geologist, assigned to Apollo mission planning. According to official records, he'd left NASA in 1973 to teach at Berkeley. According to his death certificate, he died in a car accident in Nevada in December 1972, 3 months after Apollo 17 returned from the moon. I pulled up a map of Mare Cognitum and started cross-referencing the coordinates from the seismic data. The moonquakes had all originated from the same location, spreading outward in a pattern that suggested underground hollows, caves, lots of them. My phone buzzed. A text from Leonard. Need to see you first thing tomorrow. My office, 7 a.m. sharp. I stared at the message for a long time. Leonard never texted, never called meetings before 8. I looked at the photo again, at the thing in Dr. LaRue's hands, and wondered what the hell I'd stupidly gotten myself into. I didn't sleep that night. Spent the hours before dawn studying the photograph under a desk lamp, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The object in Dr. LaRue's hands looked crystalline, branching out in fractal patterns like frozen lightning. But there was something organic about it too, the way it curved around his gloved fingers. In the background, barely visible, I could make out writing on the cave wall. Not English, not any alphabet I recognized. At 6:30, I locked the photo in my apartment safe and drove to Johnson Space Center through empty Houston streets. The security guard at the gate waved me through without checking my badge. I was there early enough that he probably assumed I was just another workaholic engineer. Leonard's office was on the 3rd floor, corner suite with windows overlooking the main campus. His door was open when I arrived at 7 sharp. He sat behind his desk, and he wasn't alone. The man sitting in the guest chair wore a black suit that probably cost more than my car. Mid-50s, grey hair cut military short. He didn't stand when I entered. Oliver Briggs, not a question. My name is Deputy Director Harlan Webb, Special Access Programs Office. Have a seat. I remained standing. What's this about? Sit down, Leonard said quietly. His voice had the hollow quality of someone who'd been awake even longer than I had. I sat. Webb pulled a tablet from his briefcase and set it on the desk between us. The screen showed security footage from the physical archives, me walking through the stacks, opening the Apollo 17 box, slipping something into my jacket. You signed in as Leonard Voss, Webb said, forged his signature, removed classified material from a secured facility. That's 3 federal crimes before lunch on a Tuesday. The box wasn't marked classified. Everything in that building is classified by default. You know that. Webb tapped the tablet and the footage switched to a different angle. We've been monitoring your workstation access logs for the past week. The Apollo Legacy Project files, the seismic data queries, the facial recognition search on Dr. LaRue. You've been very busy. My mouth had gone dry. I was just doing my job, restoring corrupted files. Those files weren't corrupted, Leonard said. They were removed. There's a difference. Webb leaned forward, folding his hands on the desk. Let me be very clear about your situation, Mr. Briggs. What you've stumbled onto is not a historical footnote. It's not a bureaucratic cover-up or a funding scandal. The information you've been accessing is classified at a level that requires congressional oversight to even acknowledge its existence. People have died to keep it secret. What people? Dr. Vincent LaRue, for one. Also his research assistant, a technician named Brooks, and 2 security officers whose job was to guard the material you found, all within 6 months of Apollo 17's return. Webb's expression didn't change. Car accidents, heart attacks, a boating incident, very unfortunate. The air conditioning hummed in the silence that followed. Through the window, I could see the morning shift arriving, engineers and administrators walking to their buildings, carrying coffee cups and briefcases, living their normal lives. So what happens now, I asked. You make me the 6th unfortunate accident? That depends entirely on you. Webb pulled a folder from his briefcase and slid it across the desk. This is a revised non-disclosure agreement, much more comprehensive than the standard separation package. You sign this, you go home, you forget everything you saw. In exchange, we don't prosecute you for the federal crimes, and you receive a severance payment sufficient to cushion your transition to new employment. I opened the folder. The severance number had 6 figures before the decimal point. And if I don't sign? Then we prosecute. Federal prison, minimum 5 years. Your security clearance revoked. Your career in any government-adjacent field permanently ended. You become unemployable in your field. Webb paused. Also, we'd be forced to investigate everyone you've had contact with recently. Friends, family members. Leonard here would face an internal review for his oversight failures. Very messy for everyone involved. I looked at Leonard. He wouldn't meet my eyes. You've got until end of business today, Webb said, standing. I suggest you take the deal, Mr. Briggs. Some secrets aren't worth dying for. He left, closing the door with a soft click that sounded like a cell locking. Leonard finally looked at me. Just sign it, Oliver, please. Whatever you think you found, it's not worth this. You knew, I said, about the caves, about what happened up there. I don't know anything, that's the point. That's how you survive in this business. You learn what not to know. He rubbed his face. I like you. You're good at your job. You keep your head down. But this, you're in way over your head. What's in the caves, Leonard? I don't know. Bullshit. I don't know, he repeated, louder this time, and I don't want to know. Neither should you. Sign the damn paperwork and walk away. I stood up. I need to think about it. Don't think. Just sign. Leonard's voice had an edge of desperation now. You think you're being brave? You're not. You're being stupid. Whatever's up there, whatever they found, it's been classified for 50 years for a reason. That reason isn't going away because one data restoration tech got curious. I walked to the door, then stopped with my hand on the knob. Dr. LaRue died in Nevada, December 1972. Car went off a mountain road near Rachel out by Area 51. They said he fell asleep at the wheel. So I looked up the accident report. LaRue's car had fresh tire tracks next to it. Another vehicle. The police never investigated who else was on that road. I turned to face Leonard. You want to tell me that was a coincidence? Leonard's face had gone pale. Get out of my office. I spent the rest of the morning in my apartment, staring at the photograph. The thing in LaRue's hands, the writing on the wall, the expression on his face, not quite fear, not quite awe, something in between. My phone rang at 2 in the afternoon. Unknown number. Mr. Briggs, my name is Preston Yates. I'm an investigative journalist with the Houston Chronicle. I understand you recently left your position at Johnson Space Center. How did you get this number? I have a source inside NASA who says you've been asking questions about Apollo 18. I'd very much like to speak with you about that. Every instinct told me to hang up. Instead, I said, Apollo 18 never happened. That's what they want everyone to believe. Yates spoke quickly, like he was afraid I'd disconnect. But I've been investigating the Apollo program for 3 years. There was an 18th mission it launched in August 1972, classified from the beginning. The crew never came back. Not all of them, anyway. You're talking about conspiracy theories. I'm talking about facts. 3 astronauts went up, 2 came back. The third one, Mitchell Groves, he's been living in a psychiatric facility in New Mexico for 50 years. They've kept him drugged and quiet. 6 months ago, he had a moment of clarity, told a nurse about the caves, about what they found down there. My hands had started shaking. What did they find? That's what I'm trying to figure out. But I need help. I need someone who understands the technical side, who can interpret the data. Yates paused. I know you found something. I know they offered you money to keep quiet. I can't match their offer, but I can give you something better. I can help you tell the truth. Through my apartment window, I could see a black sedan parked across the street. It had been there since I'd gotten home. The driver sat motionless behind tinted glass. Mr. Yates, I said carefully, I think you should know that this conversation is probably being monitored. I'm counting on it. His voice carried a grim satisfaction. The moment they start caring who I talk to, I know I'm getting close. Meet me tonight. 10 o'clock. The Denny's on Highway 3, near Clear Lake. Come alone. If you're being followed, don't stop. Just keep driving. He hung up before I could respond. I looked at the photograph again, at the thing in LaRue's hands, at the writing on the cave wall. Then I looked at Webb's folder on my kitchen table. 6 figures. A clean exit. Safety. Some secrets aren't worth dying for, Webb had said. But maybe some secrets are worth living for, worth risking absolutely everything to understand. I picked up the folder and fed it into my paper shredder, watching the pages dissolve into confetti. The black sedan was still parked there when I left at 9:30, and it followed me all the way to Clear Lake. The Denny's parking lot was half empty when I pulled in at 10:15. The black sedan had stayed 3 cars behind me the entire drive, not even trying to hide anymore. They wanted me to know I was being watched, wanted me scared. Preston Yates sat in a corner booth facing the door. Late 30s, wire-frame glasses, the kind of lean build that suggested he forgot to eat. He had a laptop open and 3 empty coffee cups pushed to the table's edge. I slid into the seat across from him. They followed me here. I know, saw them pull in right after you. Yates didn't look up from his screen. Don't worry about it. This is a public place, lots of witnesses. They're not going to do anything stupid. You sound very confident about that. I've been investigating government cover-ups for 8 years. You learn to read the patterns. He finally looked at me. They could have grabbed you any time in the past 12 hours. They haven't because they're trying to contain this quietly. A waitress appeared with a pot of coffee. I ordered without looking at the menu. Scrambled eggs, toast, bacon. Comfort food for a night that felt anything but comfortable. Yates asked for his 4th refill. When she left, he turned the laptop around so I could see the screen. It showed a scanned document, heavily redacted, with a NASA header and a date, September 12th, 1972. "This is a mission status report," Yates said. "Took me 2 years and 3 Freedom of Information Act lawsuits to get it. Notice the mission designation?" I leaned closer. The designation code was partially visible through the black redaction bars. At 18. "Apollo 18, I said quietly. "The mission that never happened." Yates pulled up another document. "Except here's a fuel requisition form from Kennedy Space Center dated August 20th, 1972. And here's a crew medical evaluation from 3 weeks before that. And here's a launch window calculation for a lunar trajectory. All of it exists in the paper trail, but none of it is supposed to exist." "Who was on the crew?" Yates opened a folder on his desktop, pulling up 3 photographs. Commander Mitchell Groves, Lunar Module Pilot Daniel Rourke, and Command Module Pilot Thomas Kelsey. All experienced astronauts, all with top secret clearances. Rourke and Kelsey came back. Groves didn't. I studied the faces carefully. Groves looked like every other astronaut from that era. Square jaw, crew cut, confident smile. In the photo, he couldn't have been more than 35 years old. "You said Groves has been in a psychiatric facility in New Mexico?" "Albuquerque Veterans Medical Center. He was admitted in October 1972 with what the records call acute psychotic disorder with paranoid delusions. Been there ever since." Yates pulled up another file. "This is an interview transcript from 6 months ago. A nurse named Darren Wright recorded it on his phone without permission. Got fired when the hospital found out." He hit play. The audio quality was poor, background noise of a hospital ward, but I could hear 2 voices clearly enough. "Mr. Groves, can you hear me? It's Darren. I brought you some apple juice." "They're sleeping." The second voice was thin, cracked. "They've been sleeping for so long, but they're starting to wake up." "Who's sleeping, Mitchell?" "The collectors. That's what Rourke called them. Said they've been collecting things from Earth for billions of years. Samples, specimens, building a library of everything that ever lived." A long pause then. "We found the newest section, the human section. There were thousands of them, thousands of people in those pods, just sleeping, waiting." "What were they waiting for?" "For the collection to be complete, for every category to be filled. Then they'll wake up and bring everything back, everything they've collected, back to wherever they came from." "When is that going to happen, Mitchell?" "Soon. They showed us the schedule. They showed us the coordinates for the next collection sites. Every major city on Earth. Millions of pods, all empty, all waiting to be filled." His voice dropped to a whisper. "We're next. All of us. We're next." The recording ended there. I sat back, my appetite gone. The eggs arrived and I didn't touch them. "Darren Wright gave me this recording 2 months ago," Yates said. "He was living in Santa Fe, working at a diner. Last week, he didn't show up for his shift. Police found his apartment empty. No signs of a struggle. No indication where he went. Just gone." "You think they took him?" "I think people who ask questions about Apollo 18 tend to disappear." Yates closed the laptop. "Daniel Rourke died in 1989. Officially it was pancreatic cancer. Thomas Kelsey is still alive though, lives in Phoenix, runs a consulting firm for aerospace contractors. I've tried to contact him 14 times. He won't return my calls." The black sedan was still visible through the window, parked under a streetlight. 2 men sat in the front seats, not even pretending to do anything but watch. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "The photograph," Yates said. "The one you took from the archives. I need to see it." I hesitated. Once I showed him, there was no going back. This stopped being just my problem and became something bigger. "Show me yours first," I said. "You must have something concrete, some proof beyond FOIA documents and a recording from a psychiatric patient." Yates reached into his messenger bag and pulled out a manila envelope. Inside was another photograph, this one in better condition than mine. It showed the interior of what looked like a cave, the walls smooth and artificial despite being underground. In the foreground stood two astronauts. I recognized Rourke and Kelsey from the photos Yates had shown me, but what caught my attention was behind them. The wall was covered with organic-looking structures, thousands of them, arranged in perfect rows. Each one was roughly human-sized, translucent, with something dark visible inside, and on each structure there was a small metal plate with writing. I could just make out the numbers on the nearest plates, dates and coordinates. "Where did you get this?" "Anonymous source. Sent to me 3 months ago, no return address. I've had it analysed. It's authentic, not photoshopped. Film stock matches what NASA used in the early 70s. Yates leaned forward. "But I can't publish this alone. I need corroboration. I need more evidence. That's where your photograph comes in." I pulled out my phone and showed him the picture I'd taken of the original. The image of Dr. LaRue holding the crystalline object, the cave walls with their strange writing. Yates stared at the screen for a long moment. "Jesus Christ. Is that what I think it is?" "I don't know what it is. It's one of the collectors." He zoomed in on the crystalline object. "Look at the structure. It's not geological. It's biological. Or something in between." He took several photos of my screen with his own phone. "This changes everything. With this, I can prove that there was an earlier mission, before Apollo 18. That's why the seismic data from 1971 was scrubbed. They'd already found the caves." "Apollo 17 was December 1972, I said, 4 months after 18. Official dates don't mean anything when you're dealing with classified missions. They could have sent multiple crews, could have been exploring those caves for years before something went wrong." Yates was typing frantically on his laptop now. "I need to get this to my editor tonight. We can run the story tomorrow. Front page. Once it's public, they can't bury it anymore." "They buried it for 50 years. What makes you think they can't do it again?" "Because we have proof now. Real proof. Not just documents and testimony. Physical evidence of what they found up there." He looked up at me, and I saw something in his eyes that made me uncomfortable. Not fear, not even excitement. Obsession. "This is the biggest story of the century. Bigger than Watergate, bigger than anything. Proof that we're not alone. Proof that something has been watching us, collecting us, for billions of years. Or proof that gets us both killed." "You worried about dying?" Yates's expression hardened. 6 people are already dead because of this. LaRue, his assistant, 2 security officers, Darren Wright, and God knows how many others we don't even know about. We owe it to them to tell the truth. The waitress came back to refill our coffee. I watched her walk away. This woman who was just trying to make rent and probably hadn't thought about the moon once in the past year. What would this story do to her world, to everyone's world? "There's something else you should know," I said. "The intro I sent you, about the capsule that came back early, about the 2 astronauts who died screaming. That's not something I found in the archives. That's from a classified report that was leaked to me anonymously last week." Yates straightened. "Who leaked it?" "I don't know. It came through an encrypted email with no return address, just like your photograph." I met his eyes. "Don't you find that suspicious? That both of us are suddenly getting evidence at the same time? That someone wants this story to come out now, after 50 years? For the first time, doubt crossed Yates's face. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe we're not investigating anything. Maybe we're being used. Maybe someone wants this information public, and we're just the useful idiots who'll take the fall for it." Before Yates could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his face went pale. "What is it?" "Email from my editor. She's pulling the story. Says she got a call from someone at the Department of Defense. They're threatening to invoke national security provisions if we publish anything about Apollo 18. So that's it? They win? No. Yates closed his laptop with a snap. This just means we need to be smarter. If the mainstream media won't touch it, we go alternative. Post everything online. Reddit, YouTube, everywhere. Make it impossible to suppress. Through the window, I saw one of the men from the black sedan get out. He was walking toward the diner entrance. Yates, I said, we need to leave. Now. He followed my gaze and saw the man approaching. Back door, come on. We left $40 on the table and moved quickly through the kitchen. A cook yelled something, but we were already out the emergency exit, running hard across the parking lot toward Yates's car. The black sedan's engine roared to life behind us. We were almost to Yates's Honda when I heard the gunshot. The bullet hit the pavement 3 feet to my left, throwing up concrete chips. Not a warning shot. Get in! Yates was already behind the wheel, engine running. I dove into the passenger seat as another shot shattered his rear window. We were moving before I'd even closed my door. Yates took the corner too fast, tires screaming, and then we were on Highway 3, heading north toward Houston, with the black sedan growing smaller in the side mirror. They shot at us. My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. They actually shot at us. Told you things were escalating. Yates kept checking the rearview mirror, knuckles white on the steering wheel. They're done playing nice. Webb's superiors must have authorized direct action. Direct action, that's what you call attempted murder. That's what they call it when they write the reports later. He swerved around a semi-truck, then took an exit I didn't recognize. We need to disappear, both of us right now. They know your address, they know where you work. Knew, past tense, and they sure as hell know where I live. Where are we going? Somewhere they won't look for us, at least not immediately. He pulled out his phone and tossed it out the window. Get rid of yours too. I threw my phone after his, watching it tumble across the highway. Yates drove for 40 minutes, taking random turns, doubling back twice to carefully check if we were being followed. Finally, he pulled into the parking lot of a cheap motel off Interstate 45, the kind of place that still had neon vacancy signs and definitely didn't ask questions if you paid cash. Wait here, he said, and went into the office. I sat in the car, watching the highway traffic blur past, trying to process what had just happened. Someone had tried to kill us, actually pulled a trigger, aimed a weapon, tried to end our lives over a 50-year-old secret. The reality of it felt slippery, like if I stopped concentrating, it would slide away into dream logic. Yates came back with a key. Room 14, around back. Park where the car can't be seen from the road. The room smelled like cigarettes and cheap cleaner. 2 beds, a bathroom that had been cleaned recently but not particularly well, a television bolted to the dresser. Yates immediately set up his laptop on the small table by the window. What are you doing? Uploading everything, every document, every photo, every recording. I'm putting it on encrypted servers, file sharing sites, everywhere I can think of. Once it's out there, they can't suppress it anymore. They just shot at us. You think they care about some files on the internet? They shot at us because the files aren't on the internet yet, because we're still the only ones who know. He was typing frantically, uploading files faster than I could track. The moment this goes public, killing us becomes pointless. We stop being threats and start being martyrs. I sat on one of the beds, suddenly exhausted. Tell me about Thomas Kelsey, the pilot who survived. Yates paused his typing. What about him? You said he lives in Phoenix, runs a consulting firm. If he was on that mission, he knows what's in the caves. Why isn't he talking? Because he's smart enough to stay silent. Yates pulled up a file. Kelsey left NASA in 1975, started his consulting business 6 months later with what looks like significant startup capital, $500,000, which in 1975 was serious money. His client list includes most of the major aerospace contractors. He's rich, comfortable, and very carefully neutral on anything to do with Apollo 18. They bought his silence. More than that, they made him complicit. He's part of the system now. Speaking out would destroy everything he's built. I thought about the photograph again, Rourke and Kelsey standing in front of those pods. What about Rourke? How did he die? pancreatic cancer in 1989. At least that's what the death certificate says. Yates opened another file. But here's something interesting. Rourke was admitted to MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston 6 months before his death. The hospital records show he was part of an experimental treatment program, except the program doesn't exist in any official database. You think they killed him? I think they kept him alive as long as they needed him, then let him die when he became inconvenient. Yates's voice was flat, matter of fact. He was starting to talk, apparently told his daughter about the caves. She was 15 at the time, didn't understand what he was saying, thought it was the cancer making him confused. Where's the daughter now? Julia Rourke. Lives in Austin, works as a software engineer. I talked to her once, she hung up on me. He closed the laptop. But she might talk to you. I don't even know what questions to ask. Ask her what her father said before he died. Ask her if he ever mentioned coordinates or collection dates. Yates leaned back in his chair. The intro you sent me mentioned that the empty pods were labelled with collection dates for next year, but next year from when? If the mission was in 1972, next year would have been 1973. That's 52 years ago. Unless the timeline is different, unless they're still preparing. Or unless next year means next year. Yates met my eyes. What if whatever's down there operates on a different timescale? What if 50 years is nothing to them? They've been collecting specimens for billions of years, according to Groves. What's another half-century? I stood up and walked to the window. The parking lot was empty except for 3 other cars and a dusty truck. Normal people doing normal things. I need to see the caves myself, I said. Yates laughed, a short bark of disbelief. What? The only real proof we have are photographs and testimony from psychiatric patients. That's not enough. If we're going to expose this, we need something undeniable. We need to show people what's actually up there. You want to go to the moon? I want to access the probe data, the remote surveys they did after Apollo 18. You said the probes mapped the caves. That data has to exist somewhere. If we can find it, if we can show exactly what's down there. It'll be classified at the highest possible level, sealed in a vault somewhere. But Yates was already opening his laptop again, interested despite himself. Though if we're talking about data from 1973, it might have been digitized during one of the archive projects. Could be sitting on a server somewhere, protected by outdated security protocols. Can you find it? Maybe. I have some contacts in the hacker community, people who specialize in penetrating government databases. He started typing. But this is the kind of thing that gets you on domestic terrorism watch lists. We'd be committing actual crimes, not just unauthorized access. This would be espionage. They already tried to kill us. How much worse can it get? Yates didn't answer immediately. Outside, I heard a car door slam. My body tensed, but it was just a couple checking into the room next door, laughing about something. There's a guy in San Antonio, Yates finally said. Goes by the handle Dark Probe. He's broken into NASA systems before, just to prove he could. Posted some embarrassing emails from administrators, nothing classified, but he knows the architecture. Can you contact him? Not without a phone or an uncompromised internet connection. This laptop is clean, but the motel Wi-Fi sure as hell isn't. He closed the computer again. We need to find an internet cafe or a library somewhere with public access that we can use once and abandon. First thing tomorrow. First thing tomorrow we might be dead. Yates pulled the curtains closed. But yeah, tomorrow. We'll reach out to Dark Probe and see if he can get us into the probe database. Maybe we'll get lucky. Maybe there's something in there that'll make all of this worth it. I lay down on the bed, still fully clothed, staring at the water-stained ceiling. Somewhere above that ceiling was the sky, and above the sky was the moon. And beneath the moon's surface were caves filled with pods, millions of them. Some filled with specimens collected over billions of years, others empty, waiting. Collection dates scheduled for next year. I thought about Groves in his hospital bed, screaming about things that were waking up, about LaRue dying on a Nevada highway, about Wright disappearing from his Santa Fe apartment, about the black sedan's driver calmly aiming a gun at my chest in a Denny's parking lot. Tomorrow we'd try to find proof. Tomorrow we'd break into government systems and risk absolutely everything for the truth. Tonight I just tried to sleep. I didn't manage much. Morning came with the smell of burnt coffee from the vending machine. I'd managed maybe 2 hours of sleep, haunted by dreams of crystalline structures wrapping around my fingers. Yates was already awake, working on his laptop. Got a response from Dark Probe. He'll meet us this afternoon. 2 o'clock, San Antonio. Coffee shop near the Riverwalk called The Grind. How much is this going to cost us? He didn't mention money, said he was interested in the story. Yates closed the laptop and rubbed his eyes, which either means he's genuinely curious or he's already been contacted by Webb's people. Either way, we don't have much choice. We checked out using cash, bought breakfast at a gas station, and started the long drive south. The Honda's shattered rear window made us conspicuous, but Yates had covered it with a garbage bag and tape. San Antonio was an hour and a half away. We spent the drive mostly in silence, both of us watching carefully for black sedans that never appeared. Maybe they'd given up. Maybe they were waiting for us to lead them to Dark Probe. Maybe they already knew exactly where we were going. The Grind was tucked between a tourist shop and a Mexican restaurant, small enough to be overlooked but busy enough to provide cover. We arrived 20 minutes early and took a table near the back with a clear view of the entrance. At exactly 2 o'clock, a young man walked in wearing a faded Megadeth shirt and carrying a messenger bag covered with stickers. Early 20s, long hair in a ponytail, pale from too much time with computer screens. He ordered a coffee, scanned the room, and headed straight for our table. Preston Yates. He sat down without waiting for an invitation. I'm Logan, though I guess you know me as Dark Probe. Thanks for meeting us, Yates said. Are you kidding? This is the most interesting thing that's happened to me in months. Logan pulled out a laptop that looked custom-built, the case covered in more stickers. You guys are all over certain corners of the dark web. There's a bounty on information about your whereabouts. $50,000, posted anonymously 3 hours ago. Who posted it? Doesn't matter. What matters is that half the hackers in Texas are now trying to find you. The other half are trying to figure out why someone would pay that much money for 2 random guys. He grinned. I'm one of the curious ones. Can you help us access NASA's probe database? Yates asked. Depends. What exactly are you looking for? Yates pulled out his phone. He'd bought a burner at the gas station and showed Logan the photographs, the cave interior, the pods, Dr. LaRue holding the crystalline organism. Logan studied the images for a long time. This is real? That's what we're trying to verify. In 1973, NASA sent remote probes to map a cave system on the moon. The data from those probes should still exist somewhere in their archives. We need to access it. Cave system on the moon. Logan laughed, but it was nervous laughter. Jesus. Okay, that's not what I was expecting. He started typing on his laptop. NASA's archive servers are well protected, but they're also running on infrastructure that's decades-old security through obscurity, mostly, if I can find the right access point. His fingers moved across the keyboard with the kind of fluid confidence that came from years of practice. Lines of code scrolled past on his screen, too fast for me to follow. There, he said after about 10 minutes. I'm in their secondary backup system, used for long-term data storage. Most of it's geological surveys, atmospheric readings, that kind of thing. But there's a partition here that's not indexed in the main catalogue, labelled Mare Cognitum Special Access. That's it, I said. That's where they would have hidden the probe data. Logan started downloading files. This is going to take a while. The partition's huge, about 3 terabytes of data. Looks like video feeds, sonar mapping, spectrographic analysis. Wait, what? There's something else in here. Live telemetry feeds, current data, not archived. He turned the laptop so we could see the screen. According to this, there are active monitoring systems in Mare Cognitum right now. They've been running continuously since 1974. Yates leaned forward. Monitoring what? Logan clicked through several data streams. Seismic activity, temperature variations, atmospheric composition inside the caves, Apparently there's a thin atmosphere down there, which shouldn't be possible on the moon, and he went pale. Oh shit, oh shit. What is it? The seismic readings, they're not geological, they're too regular, too patterned. It looks like movement. Something moving through the caves. Multiple somethings, and the activity is increasing. Look at this graph. 5 years ago, there were maybe 10 events per month. Last month, there were over 300. I thought about what Groves had said in the recording. They're starting to wake up. "Can you show us the video feeds?" Yates asked. "I can try, but the files are encrypted with some kind of military grade." Logan trailed off, typing furiously. Actually, whoever encrypted these was lazy. They used the same password scheme for all the files, classic government security. Complicated on the surface, sloppy underneath. A video window opened on his screen. The image was grainy, black and white. It showed a tunnel, the same smooth walls from the photographs. The timestamp showed a date from 3 days ago. Something crawled across the floor of the tunnel. At first, I thought it was a shadow, just a trick of the lighting. Then I realized it was moving deliberately, flowing like oil but with too much purpose to be liquid. "What the hell is that?" Logan whispered. The shape stopped in the center of the frame. For a long moment, it was perfectly still. Then it began to change, expanding upward, forming a structure that looked almost human arms. Legs, a head, but wrong, all wrong. The proportions weren't quite right. The movements too fluid, like it was still learning how bodies worked. "The collectors," I said. "That's what Groves called them. They're not just sleeping anymore." The figure on the screen turned, and even though the video had no sound, I could tell it was looking directly at the camera. Then it moved forward, reaching out, and the feed went dark. "Connection lost," Logan said. His hands were shaking. "The camera's offline. It stopped transmitting." "Show us another feed," Yates said. "There have to be multiple cameras." Logan pulled up another video stream. This one showed what looked like the central chamber, the massive space the size of Texas that the intro had mentioned. The walls were covered with pods, just like in the photographs. But now, some of them were open, empty. And on the chamber floor, I could see movement. Dozens of the shadow figures, maybe more, all moving with that same liquid grace. "They're awake," Yates said quietly. "Whatever was sleeping down there, it's waking up." "We need to download all of this," I said. "Every feed, every data file. This is proof. This is what we needed." Logan was already working, his initial fear giving way to focused determination. "I'm pulling everything I can, but someone's going to notice this access eventually. We've got maybe 20 minutes before their security systems flag the intrusion." The coffee shop door opened. A man in a black suit walked in, followed by another. They weren't even trying to be subtle. "We need to go," I said. "Now." 2 more minutes, Logan said. "The download's almost—" One of the men pulled out a badge, flashing it at the barista. The barista pointed toward our table. "We don't have 2 minutes." Yates grabbed the laptop and shoved it into Logan's bag. "Back exit. Move." We ran through the kitchen, ignoring the shouts, and burst out into an alley. The Riverwalk was 50 yards away, crowded with tourists. Behind us, the back door slammed open. 2 men, both armed, both moving with the kind of precision that suggested military training. "Split up," Yates said. "Make them choose who to follow." "Bad idea," Logan said. "I've got the laptop. They'll follow me." He was right. The data was the priority now. Everything else was secondary. "Give me the bag," I said. "I'll lead them away. You two get to a safe location and finish the download." "Oliver, do it." Logan hesitated for maybe 2 seconds, then handed me the messenger bag. It was heavier than I expected, the laptop and hard drives weighing it down. I ran toward the Riverwalk, weaving through the tourists, the bag bouncing against my hip. Behind me, I heard shouting. The men were following, exactly as I'd hoped. The Riverwalk wound through downtown San Antonio like a concrete maze. I'd never been here before, didn't know the layout, but that didn't matter. I just needed to keep moving, keep the laptop away from Webb's men long enough for Logan to secure the data remotely. I ducked into a souvenir shop, pushed through to the back, and found a service corridor. The men were still behind me. One of them was talking into a radio, calling for backup. The corridor ended at a loading dock. I jumped down, stumbled, nearly dropped the bag. My knee screamed in protest, but I kept running. A black sedan pulled up at the end of the alley, then another. They'd boxed me in. Deputy Director Webb stepped out of the first car. He looked almost disappointed. "Mr. Briggs, this could have been so much simpler if you'd just signed the paperwork." I backed away, looking for an exit that didn't exist. "You can't suppress this anymore. The data's already out there. Logan sent it to a dozen different servers before you even knew we were here. Logan Ferrara, we know all about him. He's being picked up as we speak." Webb walked toward me slowly, hands in his pockets. "You've made this very difficult, Mr. Briggs. Very messy. Now we have to clean up loose ends." "You're going to kill me." "No, we're going to offer you a choice." He pulled out a syringe filled with something clear. "This is a sedative. You take it voluntarily, you wake up tomorrow in a psychiatric facility, acute paranoid schizophrenia, triggered by work-related stress. Very sad, very treatable with medication. You live out your days in comfortable, monitored care. And if I don't take it voluntarily, then we give it to you anyway, but the dosage is much higher, and there's no waking up." He held out the syringe. "Your choice, Mr. Briggs. Live as a diagnosed paranoid, or don't live at all." I looked at the bag in my hands. 3 terabytes of data, video feeds of things that shouldn't exist, proof that humanity wasn't alone, proof that something had been watching us, collecting us, for billions of years, proof that they were waking up. "I choose option 3, I said, and threw the laptop as hard as I could into the San Antonio River. Webb's expression finally changed. He lunged forward, but it was too late. The bag hit the water with a splash and sank immediately, taking all the evidence with it. "You stupid son of a..." Webb grabbed me, slammed me against the wall. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" "Yeah," I said, tasting blood. "I've made sure you can't have it either." His men pulled him back before he could hit me again. Webb straightened his suit, his face returning to its usual careful neutrality. "Take him," he said. "High dosage." I felt the needle go into my arm. The world started to blur at the edges, sounds becoming distant and strange. The last thing I saw before everything went dark was Webb's face, leaning close. "You should have taken the deal," he said. "Now nobody wins." I woke up strapped to a hospital bed. My mouth tasted like copper and harsh chemicals. My head felt like wet sand. "Mr. Briggs, can you hear me?" The voice came from somewhere to my left. I turned my head and saw a man in a white coat. Not Webb. Someone older, grey-haired. "Where am I?" "Walter Reed Medical Center. You've been here for 3 days." He checked a monitor. "You had a severe psychotic episode in San Antonio." 3 days. I'd lost 3 days. "I remember everything," I said. "The caves, the collectors, the video feeds showing them waking up. Webb trying to kill me." The doctor made a note on his tablet. "Acute paranoid delusions with persecution complex, not uncommon in cases of extreme stress." He looked at me with something that might have been pity. "Mr. Briggs, you've experienced a complete break from reality. There is no Deputy Director Webb. There are no caves on the moon. These are constructions your mind created to deal with trauma. I have proof. You threw a laptop into a river. We recovered it, but the hard drive was destroyed by water damage. There was nothing on it." He adjusted my IV drip. "The hallucinations will decrease as the medication takes effect. In a few weeks, you'll be able to see how irrational your beliefs were. What about Preston Yates, Logan Ferrara? Are they constructions too?" Preston Yates is a journalist with a history of publishing unsubstantiated conspiracy theories. He's facing charges for filing false reports and wasting law enforcement resources. As for Logan Ferrara, there's no record of anyone by that name in San Antonio. The doctor left. I stared at the ceiling. Had I imagined everything? The photographs, the documents, the recordings? No, I'd held the photograph of Dr. LaRue. I'd seen the seismic data. The door opened again. This time it was Webb, wearing a visitor's badge and carrying a folder. "So you do exist," I said. "Good afternoon, Mr. Briggs. I wanted to check on your recovery." He pulled up a chair and sat beside the bed. "The doctors tell me you're responding well to treatment." "Treatment for a condition I don't have." "We both know that's not true." Webb opened the folder. "You broke into restricted archives. You accessed classified databases. You collaborated with a known cybercriminal. These are facts, Mr. Briggs, not delusions." "Then why am I here instead of in prison?" "Because prison would require a trial. Trials are public. Evidence gets presented. Witnesses testify." Webb closed the folder. "This is cleaner. You're a mentally ill man who had a breakdown. Very sad. The kind of thing that happens when people can't handle the stress of their jobs. You're keeping me here to silence me. We're keeping you here because you're dangerous, to yourself and to others." He stood up. "But I'm not here to argue about your diagnosis. I'm here to offer you something one last chance." He pulled a second folder from his briefcase and set it on my lap. Inside were documents, forms, legal paperwork that I couldn't quite focus on through the medication fog. "What is this?" "A transfer to a private facility in New Mexico, the same one where Mitchell Groves has spent the last 50 years. Webb's expression didn't change. "You could talk to him, ask him about what he saw in the caves, get confirmation of everything you've been investigating." "Why would you let me do that?" "Because it doesn't matter anymore. The timeline has accelerated. The collection dates we were preparing for, the ones scheduled for next year, they've been moved up. Something down there triggered early. The seismic activity you saw in Logan's download, it's been increasing exponentially every day." "How long?" 72 hours, maybe less." Webb sat back down, and for the first time, he looked genuinely tired. "We've known about the caves since 1971. The first probe missions found them by accident during seismic surveys. At first, we thought they were just geological formations. Then we found the pods, the specimens, the collection schedule written in symbols we barely understood. The 1972 mission, Apollo 18, was supposed to be a simple reconnaissance. Map the caves, take samples, get out. But Groves, Rourke, and Kelsey, they went too deep. They found the central chamber. They activated something, some kind of biological mechanism that the collectors use to mark collection sites." Webb pulled out a photograph and showed it to me. "This is what Groves looked like before the mission." The photo showed a healthy man in his 30s, the same image I'd seen before. Webb pulled out a second photo. "This is what he looked like when the capsule came back." I wish I hadn't looked. The thing in the second photo barely resembled a human. The skin had a greyish tone, the eyes were too large, and there was something wrong with the bone structure of the face, like it had been rebuilt by someone working from memory. What happened to him? The collectors happened. They tried to transform him, convert him into one of them. Rourke and Kelsey managed to stop the process halfway, got him back to the capsule, but the damage was done. His DNA was corrupted at the cellular level. He's been deteriorating ever since. And the third astronaut, the one who didn't come back. Webb was quiet for a long moment. "We don't talk about that." "Tell me." "His name was Vincent LaRue. He was a civilian specialist brought along for his expertise in xenobiology. When the transformation started happening to Groves, LaRue volunteered to stay behind. He could study the process, maybe find a way to reverse it." Webb put the photos away. "They found his body 3 months later during a probe mission. He'd integrated with the cave system, become part of it. His consciousness was still active, but it wasn't human anymore. The collectors took him. The collectors offered him a choice. That's what they do. They don't take people by force. They offer them something. Knowledge, power, immortality. They show you what you could become. And some people say yes." I thought about the crystalline object in LaRue's hands, the way he'd been holding it, almost lovingly. What did LaRue see that made him stay? Everything. The collectors have been observing Earth for 4 billion years. They know our history better than we do. They know what we'll become. They showed LaRue the future, and he decided he wanted to be part of it. And now they're coming here to collect us. Not all of us. The pods are selective. They take specimens. Samples from each era, each civilization, each evolutionary branch. Most of humanity will be left behind, but the chosen ones. Webb trailed off. LaRue said it was an honor, called it being preserved for eternity. But we've seen what happens to the specimens in those pods. They're not alive, Mr. Briggs. They're not dead either. They're something in between. Suspended. Waiting. Waiting for what? For the collectors to finish their archive, for every category to be complete, and then they'll take everything back to wherever they came from, every sample they've ever collected, every species, every moment of Earth's history, all of it gone. The room felt too small suddenly. You've known about this for 50 years. Why didn't you warn anyone? Warn them about what? That alien collectors are coming to take samples of humanity. That most of us will be left behind while a chosen few get preserved in biological pods for some unknowable purpose. Webb laughed bitterly. We'd have mass panic, religious hysteria, the complete collapse of civilization. Better to keep working on a solution quietly. Have you found one? No, we tried destroying the caves with nuclear weapons in 1983. The collectors absorbed the blast. We tried sealing the entrances. They opened new ones. We tried negotiating. They don't communicate in ways we understand. He stood up. The only thing we've learned is that they're inevitable. When they come, they take what they want. Always have, always will. Then why are you telling me this? Because I'm offering you a choice, the same choice LaRue had, the same choice Groves rejected. Webb pulled out a third photograph. This one showed a pod, empty and waiting, with a metal plate attached. My name was written on it. You could be one of the chosen. Your consciousness preserved forever. You'd be part of something bigger than human history. Bigger than Earth. I stared at the photograph, my name on a pod in a lunar cave. Or, I asked, or you stay here, get medicated, live out your life in comfortable ignorance. When the collection happens, you'll be left behind with everyone else. You'll wake up one morning and some people will be missing. The world will be a little emptier, but you'll survive. Most people will. How do you know I'm one of the chosen? Because the collectors marked you. When you accessed those video feeds, when you saw them moving through the caves, they saw you too. They always know who's watching, and they remember. Webb walked to the door. You have until tomorrow morning. After that, the transfer window closes. Choose, Mr. Briggs. He left me alone with the photograph, my name on a pod, a ticket to eternity, or a prison forever. I thought about what the doctor had said, that I was experiencing delusions, that none of this was real, but I could feel the truth of it in my bones. The collectors were real. The caves were real. And somewhere beneath the moon's surface, something ancient was waking up. I looked at the IV drip beside my bed, clear liquid flowing into my arm, medication to make me doubt, to make me accept, to make me choose. I pulled the needle out. The alarm started immediately. Footsteps in the hallway, nurses running, but I was already out of bed, already moving toward the window. I didn't know what I was going to do next, didn't know if I'd choose the pod or refuse it. All I knew was that I needed to see Mitchell Groves, needed to hear from someone who'd actually been in the caves, who'd seen the collectors up close, needed to know if becoming something other than human was worth the cost of staying alive forever. The door burst open, security guards, doctors, Webb himself. Mr. Briggs, Webb said calmly, where exactly do you think you're going? I looked at him through the medication fog, through the doubt and fear and confusion. New Mexico, I said. I need to talk to a man about some caves. Webb let me go. That was the strangest part. After everything, the threats, the drugging, the forced hospitalization, he simply nodded and arranged transport to New Mexico. You deserve to see what you're choosing, he said, before the end. The Albuquerque Veterans Medical Center sat on the eastern edge of the city, a sprawling complex of beige buildings that looked more like a college campus than a psychiatric facility. They were expecting me. A nurse named Gordon led me through 3 security checkpoints, each one requiring retinal scans and biometric verification. "Mr. Groves doesn't get many visitors," Gordon said as we walked down a long, sterile hallway. "In fact, you're the first in about 8 years." What happened 8 years ago? His daughter came, stayed for maybe 10 minutes, left crying. Gordon stopped at a door marked with a biohazard symbol. "He's not what you'd expect, Mr. Briggs. The transformation didn't complete, but it didn't stop either. He's been changing slowly for 50 years. Is he dangerous? To himself, maybe. To others?" Gordon shrugged. "He hasn't hurt anyone, but he's not exactly human anymore either." The room beyond the door was large and dim, more like a terrarium than a hospital room. The temperature was cold, maybe 50 degrees. The walls were covered with what looked like organic growth, dark, crystalline structures that branched out in fractal patterns. Some of them were pulsing faintly, like they had a heartbeat. In the center of it all sat Mitchell Groves. He barely looked human. His skin had the same greyish tone I'd seen in Webb's photograph, but it had gone further. Parts of his body had crystallized, the same dark mineral structure growing from his shoulders, his arms, even his face. His eyes were too large, the pupils vertical slits like a reptile. But when he looked at me, there was still intelligence there. Still something that remembered being a man. "Oliver Briggs," he said, his voice rasping like wind through dry leaves. "They told me you were coming. The collectors told me. They've been watching you." I stepped closer, trying not to stare at the crystalline growths. "I need to know what happened in the caves, what you saw down there." "Everything." Groves smiled, and it was horrible. His teeth had changed too. "They showed us everything. The history of Earth from the moment the first cell divided. Every species that ever lived, every civilization that rose and fell. All of it preserved in those pods, a library of life. Webb said you activated something, that you triggered the collection early. We touched one of the pods. That was our mistake. The moment our hands made contact, they knew we were there. Knew we were aware. Knew we'd seen their archive." Groves stood up slowly, his movements wrong, joints bending in ways they shouldn't. "The collectors don't mind being observed from a distance. But once you touch their work, once you make yourself known to them, they respond. They mark you as a potential specimen." "Is that what happened to LaRue? Vincent chose his fate. They offered him knowledge, complete understanding of their purpose, their origin, their destination. He said yes, accepted the transformation willingly." Groves walked to the window, looking out at the New Mexico sky. Rourke and I said no. Kelsey couldn't decide, so he ran. Coward lived 50 years in denial, but Vincent and I, we understood what was being offered. He accepted, I refused, and here we are. You're still changing. Because the transformation doesn't stop just because you refuse it. The marker is permanent. I'm becoming what they wanted me to be, just slower, more painful. By the time I die, I won't be human at all, I'll be something in between. He touched the crystalline growth on his shoulder. Vincent got to skip all this suffering. He became what he was meant to become immediately. But me? I get to watch myself disappear piece by piece, watch my humanity erode year after year. Then why did you refuse? Groves turned to look at me with those terrible eyes. Because I wanted to suffer. Because I needed to remember what I'd done. We opened the door, Mr. Briggs. The three of us. We made ourselves known to them, and now they're coming. Coming to collect not just specimens, but everyone who knows about them. Everyone who's touched their work. What are you saying? The pods with coordinates for major cities, those were always the plan. But there's a second collection happening first, a smaller one. For people like you, like Yates, like Logan. Everyone who accessed those video feeds, everyone who saw the collectors moving through the caves. Groves smiled that horrible smile again. They don't like being watched, so they're coming for the watchers first. How long? Hours, maybe less. The seismic activity you saw was them preparing, opening new tunnels, creating pathways to the surface. They don't have ships, Mr. Briggs. They don't need them. They travel through the rock itself, moving through solid matter like it's water. I thought about Webb's offer. The pod with my name on it. A chance at preservation instead of collection. Is there a difference, I asked, between being chosen and being collected? The chosen get to keep their consciousness. They're preserved as they are, suspended in those pods forever. Still aware, still thinking, but frozen. Unable to move or speak or interact, just existing. Groves tapped the crystalline growth on his chest. The collected are transformed first, converted into something that can survive the journey back to wherever the collectors came from. You lose yourself in the process, become part of them. And you've been resisting that transformation for 50 years. Every single day, fighting to stay human even as my body betrays me, clinging to memories that fade a little more each year. He sat back down heavily. Webb offered you a pod, didn't he? A chance to be preserved instead of transformed. How did you... Because he offers it to everyone who's marked. It's his way of pretending he has control. Pretending humanity has a choice in any of this. Groves laughed, a sound like breaking glass. But here's what he doesn't tell you. The pods aren't preservation. They're prison. You're conscious but paralyzed. Aware but helpless. You get to spend eternity watching from inside a cage while the universe moves on without you. Then what's the alternative? Accept the transformation. Become what they want you to become. Lose your humanity, but gain freedom. Join them in their endless collection. Become part of something bigger than yourself. He leaned forward. Or option 3. The one Vincent and I wished we'd chosen. The one that would have saved us all. What's option 3? Never go to the caves in the first place. Never look, never touch. Stay ignorant and safe. Groves closed his eyes. But it's too late for you, just like it was too late for us. The moment you saw those video feeds, the moment you watched the collectors moving, they marked you. You can't unmark yourself, can't unsee what you've seen. Outside, the sky had started to darken, not sunset. It was only 2 in the afternoon. I walked to the window and looked up. The clouds were moving wrong, swirling in patterns that shouldn't exist in nature. And beneath them, I could see points of light, dozens of them, hundreds, descending toward Earth like falling stars that fell upward instead of down. They're here, Groves whispered. The collectors, coming for everyone who watched. Gordon burst through the door. Mr. Briggs, we need to evacuate. There's some kind of atmospheric phenomenon, multiple objects entering the airspace above Albuquerque. The military is scrambling jets, but... He stopped talking when he saw the sky, saw the lights descending in perfect geometric patterns, saw the clouds forming shapes that looked almost like symbols. What do we do? Gordon asked. I thought about Webb's offer, the pod waiting for me, a chance at preservation, at keeping some fragment of myself alive for eternity, even if it meant being trapped in paralyzed awareness forever. I thought about LaRue accepting transformation, becoming something other than human, losing himself but gaining freedom. I thought about Groves spending 50 years fighting a losing battle against change, suffering every day to maintain a humanity that was slipping away piece by piece. 3 choices, all of them terrible. Mr. Briggs, Gordon's voice was high with panic, what do we do? Through the window, I saw the first of the collectors touch down in the parking lot. It moved like the shadows in the video feeds, liquid darkness forming into something almost human. It stood there for a moment as if orienting itself, then turned its head toward our building, toward me. I need a phone, I said, and access to the internet, now. Gordon stared at me. You want to check your email? The world is ending and you want to check your... I want to broadcast. I grabbed his shoulders. Logan downloaded 3 terabytes of data. Video feeds, seismic readings, everything. He might have been caught, but he's a hacker. He would have had backups, redundancies. The data still exists somewhere. So if I'm marked because I watched, then everyone else who watches gets marked too. If I can broadcast those video feeds, show them to millions of people, the collectors will have to mark everyone. They can't collect the entire human race at once. They don't have enough pods. Groves started laughing, that terrible broken glass sound. You want to flood the system, he said. Overwhelm them with marked individuals. Force them to choose who to collect. Or force them to leave entirely. If everyone knows about them, if everyone's seen them, they lose the advantage of secrecy. I turned to Gordon. Get me a phone, please. Gordon ran. Outside, more collectors were arriving. Dozens of them, hundreds. The parking lot was filling with liquid shadows that formed and reformed into almost human shapes. Groves stood beside me at the window. It won't work, they'll just collect everyone anyway. Take the whole planet if they have to. Maybe, but at least everyone will know what's happening. At least it won't be a secret anymore. I looked at him. That's worth something, isn't it? Truth. He considered this for a long moment, watching the collectors gather. Yes, he finally said, I suppose it is. Gordon came back with a phone. I opened a browser and started desperately searching for Logan's digital footprint, his backup servers, his dead man switches. All the places a paranoid hacker would hide data in case something happened to him. Outside, the collectors started moving toward the building. I had maybe 5 minutes. I started uploading, and the video went viral in 17 minutes. 3 terabytes of classified NASA data streaming across every major platform Logan had configured as backup systems. Reddit, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok. Millions of people watched the collectors moving through lunar caves, watched the pods, watched the seismic readings spike. By the time the government could shut down the servers, it was already too late. The data had been copied and re-uploaded by thousands of users worldwide. The collectors stopped, not immediately. They'd already taken the first wave, the watchers who'd seen the feeds before the broadcast. I watched through the hospital window, saw Gordon dissolve into liquid darkness, his screams cutting off as his body was converted. Saw other nurses, other patients, all transformed in seconds. But then the collectors just stood there in the parking lot, waiting, like they were receiving instructions from somewhere far away. Groves was laughing in that broken glass way of his. You did it. You actually did it. You've marked the entire human race. Did I save them or doom them? Both. Neither. Does it matter? He pressed his face against the window, watching the collectors remain motionless. They can't take everyone, not enough pods, not enough time, but they can't leave everyone either, because now everyone knows. Everyone's marked. The collectors began to retreat. One by one, they sank back into the earth, flowing through concrete and soil. Within an hour, they were gone completely. Webb found me 6 days later. I was back in Walter Reed, this time unrestrained, unmedicated. Just a patient recovering from exposure to an unknown phenomenon. You've created a paradox, he said, sitting beside my bed. They can't collect everyone, but they can't leave knowing we're all marked. So they're waiting, watching, trying to decide what to do with a species that's aware of them. How long will they wait? No idea. Could be years. Could be centuries. Could be tomorrow. Webb looked tired, older. But they're still up there, still in those caves, still adding to their archive, just waiting for us to forget. For the world to move on, for people to convince themselves it was all a hoax. Will they forget? People forget everything eventually. Give it a generation, maybe 2. The video feeds will become just another internet conspiracy. Something people laugh about. And then, he trailed off. Then they'll come back. Then they'll come back. Webb left me with a file folder. Inside was a single photograph, the pod that had my name on it, except the name had been scratched out, replaced with a question mark. I'm writing this 3 months after the broadcast. The world hasn't ended yet. People are still going to work, still paying bills, still living their lives. Some believe what they saw, most don't. The government calls it a sophisticated hoax, a mass delusion triggered by coordinated deepfakes. But every night I look up at the moon and I know the truth. They're still there, still watching, still collecting their specimens from a planet that now knows it's being observed. And someday, when we've forgotten to be afraid, when we've convinced ourselves it was all fake, they'll come back, Not for everyone, just for enough. The pods are patient, the collectors are patient, and me? I'm learning to be patient too, because I know something they don't know I know. The caves beneath the moon aren't the only archive. There are others. On Mars. On Europa. On worlds we haven't discovered yet. And they're all waiting for their collections to be complete. All of them.